Hey everyone, welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to kind of go over some basics with adding actions to an actor. Now, these ones are going to be more aesthetic rather than functional. That being, I'm not going to be really using them as a player interactivity kind of setup. Um, so these are just ways to mess around with your UI, get some extra little details into the polish of your game. So I figure we're gonna flesh out this splash screen, and I actually do have an effect all set up and pre-written that I'll be showing you guys today, and it actually turned out pretty nice looking. Um, so I'll cover some of the things I used and how to use them and what each one means. But after this, I believe I'm going to follow up with going into a loading screen. So that'll involve getting our base application class set up and getting a sort of game state manager kind of code written, like functionality, just to be able to save certain states when we leave and come back, that kind of thing. So um, we'll cover asset manager, kind of a progress bar loading and whatnot, but that'll be soon to come. So um, I believe I'll also introduce something like that in the raw game state manager that we created in some separate tutorial videos. So you can have the choice between the two different setups. They're pretty much the same. So uh, you won't really be missing out on much using either setup when trying to figure out how you're doing your asset management and resource handling. So with that, let's jump right in. And you know what? I forgot to do stage.dispose, and I just wanted to make sure you guys caught that. And I believe I have to do splash image dot. Yeah, okay. So anything out of the stage, it'll just dispose it for you. Um, and I believe that should be everything. So with that, we can continue, and let's get a basic effect going for our splash image. And the thing that I suggest adding is that this static import here. Um, you can take a moment and pause and see what this is. I'll actually zoom in a little bit just in case it's kind of blurry. But it's this import static com bad logic GDX scene2D dot actions and star, and that way you get all the methods that are the public methods that are available in actions without having to call actions dot that method. So that's just a quick overview of what that does. We'll zoom back out real quick. Okay. And so we're going to add our first action to our splash image. So like I said, when you're doing the show, these will be called every time the screen is set, and we want to do it in the show this time around because of, you know what, we actually want to move this set position as well down here. So everything's all refreshed anytime we enter the splash screen again. And I'll show that off once we get our loading screen set up. So to add your very first action, you just do splash image. So you take an actor and you call the add action method, and we're just going to set the alpha value of the splash image to be 0.5 for now. So again, like I said with that static import, now you'll notice it's all lit up now because we are using it. To do this, like if you didn't have the static import, you'd have to call actions dot alpha 5f, and that can get kind of cumbersome when you start chaining these actions together. Calling actions all the time becomes pretty redundant. So in this case, it is good to call import static. Now, this isn't just something you should use all the time. Be very sparse with it. Don't use it for everything just to be able to have methods all over the place, because that'll really make your code hard to read. But yeah, so adding this action, when the splash screen is set, it'll tell the splash image to set its position to the center here, and I did find out that that image was 64 pixels by 64 pixels, so it's a 32 offset, half image offset. And then it'll add this action, and then the stage.act will be called, and it'll call all the actors that the stage has, and one being the splash image. It'll trigger the action queue that is established for the splash image, and it'll call them one by one. So it'll set the alpha of the image to 0.5. So now you can kind of see it's a little translucent there, and that's perfect. Okay, I do not know what happened there. Seg fault. I feel like that has something to do with, I'm probably not disposing something right somewhere. This dot get screen dot dispose. I think I should do that. See that real quick. Just make sure that doesn't happen again. So close. Okay, so now it calls out dispose method. That's what we want. Good. So do that for now. I might take a peek back at this later in case that happens again in some instance, so we don't get any seg faults for memory allocation problems after resources aren't let go. So yeah, we got our action, set the alpha to 0.5, and that's what we wanted. Now let's say you want to do like another action, like splash image dot add action, fade in, and we want to fade in over 3 seconds. So let's set this to 0. So now the alpha, the image will be completely invisible, and it'll take 3 seconds and fade in back to alpha 1. And there you have it. So that was pretty simple getting that all put together, and you'll notice how it called the alpha and then it called the fade in, and that is because it'll finish out this action and then it'll call the next action in queue and start running the code there. You do also get the choice to set the way these act. But I'll get into that in a second. They're called interpolation values. But for now, let's discuss getting these add actions cleaned up. So if we're trying to just chain together a whole bunch of actions, there's a way simpler way to get this going, and that is called a sequence action. It is the same type of action, but in the parameters of this sequence action, you can actually add as many actions as you want. So we'll do fade in 2, and now you'll notice we just this will do the same thing we had before, but now it's all on one line and it's keeping it together as considerably one action. So there we go. Now, one thing to note is it's not doing these at the same time. It's kind of doing exactly what we had before, where it calls this one first, finishes it, and then goes into this one, finishes it, and then it'll go back to the next one, and if you have more actions, it'll just do them one at a time. However, if let's say you want to do them in parallel, like at the same time they all need to start running, let's do a move by call, and we'll move by 30 and -20, and that'll be over 2 seconds. And to call them at the same time, or actually we need to do alpha 0, and then we'll do parallel, add some parentheses here. These do start to get a little messy, so be a little careful how you're chaining them together. But you'll notice we have a sequence which it calls an alpha, so it'll set that first, then continue. And we have this parallel command. And in the parallel parameters, you can have as many actions as you want, just like the sequence. However, it runs all those actions at the same time. So you'll notice the fade in will happen the same time that it's moving the image to the right and down by 20. So see that? As it was easing, it was fading in at the same time. So that's so you can achieve a lot of different kinds of effects. And so just to kind of go through them real quick, actions dot, okay, so you have an after, where you can have an action that will occur after a certain thing happens. You have an alpha, which affects the uh, alpha channel of an image of the actor, and then you have an alpha and a duration, so it'll kind of interpolate to that alpha channel from whatever it is right now. Then you have color, you can change the color. You have a duration, so it can take time, so it won't be instantaneous. Any of the ones that have a duration, just tell it to do it over time. So go from where you are now and slowly transition to the new point that you're telling it to go to. And then the interpolation ones that have the interpolation parameter, that's where you get to specify the type of function, interpolation function that is used. So this could be linear interpolation. This could be a power function to where it'll ease in really fast and then slow down as it gets closer to the target, that kind of deal. So you have your delay, which tells it to wait before doing another action. It's basically just a waiting period of nothing. And then you have, you can also give it a delayed action to happen after that duration, but in a way you could just say delay for a certain amount of time and in a sequence just have another action after that. You have the fade in like we observed where it can change the alpha value to 1. It'll go all the way up to 1, and you can give it a duration, and that is always a over time kind of thing, so it'll go from whatever it is then to 1. And then you have a fade out, which will go to 0. Forever will have an action that is always called and it'll keep being called, so we could probably mess around with that a little bit or something down the road. Then you have move by, which will take the current coordinates of wherever the actor is and move by a certain amount. Then you have move to, which will set the absolute position to that. You can also set a duration, which will make it smooth pan to that location from wherever it is, I guess. Which is essentially the same thing as the move by float duration, I guess. Maybe a little bit different, but then you have your parallels. We talked about parallels, how you can add actions and so on and so forth. You can remove the actor after a certain action. You can repeat a certain action a certain amount of times. You can rotate an image by however much amount with a duration. Rotate to a certain degree. This is kind of similar to the move to and move by amount. You have a run action, which this one is actually we're going to be using this most likely in the next video. This one allows you to set a runnable action, which you can put in your own code to be ran, and that one can be very useful, especially for getting your splash screen and loading screen all established. So we'll touch back on that one most likely by the next video. Then you have your scale by, which I'll actually demonstrate this with the effect I have created for us today, where you can set the scale of the image to a certain amount, and again it's like the by and to, so you can set an absolute amount or scale whatever you have now by a certain amount. Then you have sequence. We talked about sequence. Show just tells it to show if it was set to hide. Size by changes the size of the image, like it'll stretch it. Let's see, touchable, I believe that's just for touch input. And then visible, again, that's like the hide and visible. And the rest are just kind of public final values that you can use for other kinds of things. So that's essentially a pretty good rundown of all the things you can do with all these actions that you have at hand. And I think it's time to show you guys what I had put together, just so we don't drag this on anymore. I'm going to change the background to just be white, just so it matches the eyes of the image we have currently. But it's going to be a sequence. I'm going to set the alpha to 0. And I'm going to scale to 0.1f, 0.1f, and that is in the x direction and y direction, so you can scale and skew however you want. And then I'm going to have a parallel action where I fade in by 2 seconds. I'm going to interpolate using a power by 2 function. Oh, sorry about that. And then we're going to drop down one more, and then we're going to move, or wait. So just trying to make sure I get this right. Power by 2, and then I have a scale to 2f, 2f. That's going to be 2.5 seconds, and that's going to interpolate by a power 5 function. And then we're going to have a move to width divided by, or I'm sorry, stage.get width divided by 2 minus 32, and a stage.get height divided by 2 minus 32. And that's going to take 2 seconds to move there, and that's going to use a swing interpolation, which is actually a pretty cool one. So we're going to get a really cool effect out of this. I think you guys are going to like this one. But thing we need to do first is get this set up. So the image is going to start out centered, but above and outside of the current viewing port, and then it's going to come down and it'll start out with 0 alpha, and it'll be very small, and then it's going to fade in, scale larger as it gets closer to the center, and because we're swinging in, it'll kind of bounce down and then come back up and settle. So it'll look like it's coming at you from the screen. It's a really cool effect. So hopefully I did this right. So yeah, there we go. That was pretty neat. I think one thing I needed to do was to set the origin. So splash image dot set origin. That's going to be splash image dot get width divided by 2. Splash image dot get height. Divide that by 2 as well. And I think it should run into the center now. So what set origin does, it just kind of tells that yeah, there we go. It tells that the anchor point, instead of being down here in the bottom left, it'll be in the center. And that can be useful for centering objects when you're using absolute positioning. So you don't have to do a lot of minus 32 and that kind of stuff. So yeah, we got a basic splash screen effect going now, and I think I'll add one more just to kind of finalize the effect, and that is just going to be a fade, actually, you know what, delay for 1.5 seconds, and then fade out for 1.25 seconds. Cool. So then at that time, it would jump into our loading screen that we'll be setting up next time. So with that, hope you guys enjoyed the video, messing around with some of these action sequencing and parallels and alpha effects. But just mess around with them. You can get a lot of cool things with interpolation stuff. Some of them don't work very well when you're using them for like fade in and stuff, such as like swing and elastic, as they try to use negative values. And because the alpha channel doesn't really support a negative alpha value, you'll get some weird effects. So just be aware of that. But for the most part, you should be starting to understand all the things you can do with these actions, and aesthetically at least. But later down the road, we'll begin messing with actors and whatnot, and we'll start seeing more user input type of actions. So from that. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe as usual, and thanks for watching.